Hey Leanne, good afternoon.
Hey there.
How's
How's
it
it
going?
going?
Yeah, I'm fine. You?
Doing well over here. How's the UAE? How's the
Yeah.
weather?
UAE is humid as usual. You go out and it's like um give it 10 minutes, maybe five, and you come back in and you need to change your shirt and maybe take a shower or something. So it's still humid, still humid.
So it's getting better then because in the height of summer you think about going outside and you already need to change your clothes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so progress. We're progressing now to October when hopefully the Goldilocks period starts and it gets a bit better. But how about your end? It's a lot drier, maybe hot, but drier, huh?
In the mornings, and I apologize to everyone who only operates in Celsius, but in the mornings it's about 78 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's nice.
Right.
It is a lot drier. We have some days that have humidity, but the weather's turning nice, and hopefully in just a couple of weeks we'll actually start to feel fall.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting. So perhaps we can go into that in a bit more detail later, the seasons, because a lot of people um, aren't actually aware of the the change in seasons that you can have in the different areas of Saudi Arabia. There are some green areas, some sandy areas, some places sometimes where you get snow and whatever. So quite a variation.
Well, I think that people in general just don't realize how large Saudi Arabia is.
Yeah.
So it's huge, first and
Mm.
foremost. And then it is completely diverse. That includes the different cultures from the different regions to also the landscape.
Yeah.
And that's really been fun for me to get to experience and also learn more myself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which is a good segue into kind of our discussion. So I entitled the discussion, obviously it can be wider. I refer to it as Sands of Change. And I'm sure there's some Hollywood movie that planted that name in there. So I'll find it. It's some movie somewhere, so possibly it's not that original. Um, but I would say though, it is literal. It's Sands of Change. And it's great for everybody watching to have yourself here, LeAnne. And quick intro from my side. I mean, we've known each other for quite some years, and we bumped into each other across the Middle East. I uh, I know you've been a business journalist. You've been and now in corporate communications and involved in strategy. You've lived in Egypt, the lovely pyramids and everything else that's there, Aswan and Alexandria and all those places. And you've lived and contributed to the development of the UAE. And now your journey takes you to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I introduce everyone to LeAnne of Arabia.
Well, I mean, I hope I live up to that introduction because that was a nice intro. And I may ask you to come around with me everywhere to give that kind of introduction. But yes, I came to the Middle East. I came to Cairo back in 2008. But I think that when you meet a lot of expats, and there's a huge expat community
Yeah.
in the Middle East. And when you meet a lot of expats and you ask them, well, how did you end up here? Most of the time they say it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
But for me, I knew that I wanted to be in the region from as early as 8 years old. And I know that sounds unbelievable, but I knew I wanted to be a journalist and I knew I wanted to be in the Middle East. And I was always so interested about the Middle East. I was always reading
Mm.
everything I could on it. And when I was first contacted to move to Egypt, I was first contacted in 2007. And at that time, I was 23, and my family was just not having it. And I was sad because, and also things just didn't
Mm.
align. But when I have this belief that if it's meant to be, it'll come back around. Now, I didn't think the same opportunity would come back around, but it did 1 year later.
Right.
And this time I decided to make the decision. And then I told my family I was going. And at first, they were
Yeah.
terrified. I'm going
Yep.
by myself and landing in Cairo. And for anyone who's been to Cairo, it is sensory overload, especially when you first land there. And it was my first place to live outside of the US.
Right.
Um, but I ended up spending 7 years there. And, I had some great times, some great experiences. My family eventually came to visit me, and they visited me before the Arab Spring, and they fell in love with the region themselves.
Right. Right.
So it's been quite a journey, and Egypt really kicked it off for me.
Yeah. Okay. So before we delve into kind of the, let's say, the main topic, the that I wanted to cover, and that's in the energy sector and energy transition and all of that stuff. It would be really good, just in a short summary, just to get your view on over the, I think you've been in the region around 15 years. You've traveled across the region, so you've seen the different corners of it. Just the change and the transformation that you have seen in the 15 years, because it's not just about tall buildings and bridges and power plants and things like that. I mean, there's been a significant, well, at least what I've seen, a significant cultural, business, communication, sporting change. And so given that you've been here like 15 years, just a bit of a synopsis on what you've seen from a personal lens.
Personally, I've seen the region open up a lot
Mm.
in just the time that I've been here. And, being focused in energy, that is the best example of that. I mean, if you look back in 2008, when we were in renewables, it was the same 5 to 10 people at every conference. And there weren't a lot of conferences. Let's be honest with each
Yeah.
other. And there was only one big conference, and that was in Abu Dhabi, the World Future Energy Summit. That was the major event
Yeah.
that was happening. And now any conference you go to, you see all of these new faces. You still get to see some of the old faces too,
Yeah.
which is nice. But that's been one of the major transitions that I've seen in the Middle East. And that permeates throughout life, because energy is what starts, it's what helps your economy grow. And when I was reporting in Egypt and I was focusing on Africa, I did one story on Coca-Cola providing solar panels to different kiosk owners in Kenya. And the economic benefits were huge because they were able to stay open later because they previously had to close down at night. And that was a micro view. Now we're looking at huge economies of scale, these really large energy
Mm.
projects that are underway. So it's been a journey, and it's been an exciting one to be there. And again, personally, you see the changes in Saudi with women being able to drive. Just everything is really becoming more open,
Yeah.
and it's really exciting to be able to be a part of that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Women being able to drive, women going to space, women driving Formula E cars, and I think it's yeah, beyond just the small Hyundai or Nissan, right? I mean, it's a big change.
Fair point.
Yeah,
Fair point. I'm
yeah.
glad that you brought that up, because those are hugely monumental.
Cool, cool. And I can 'cause I've been in the region a similar time to you, and kind of second that. And obviously different I think a lot of people don't realize is that you have many different countries in the Middle East, and even within the countries you have many different regions, and each of them have their own sort of culture, specific kind of even differences in language, uh, sometimes clothing, the way they do their kaftan, and it's just fascinating. You have a multitude of cultures, and that's what I found as well. And actually, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to jump in there because I think that's a really interesting point that a lot of others don't think about. Typically when you think of multinational companies,
Yeah,
you think that it's very diverse, but actually every organization that I've been involved in the Middle East, it is much like the UN, and also in your personal life, your friend group. It's like the UN. You have so many friends who are from all over the world. And it is really a melting pot.
absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? That is reflected in our industry, in the energy industry, and that's why I'm kind of a lot of people. I mean, you've spoken to me, and when we start getting into these topics, everyone's like, "Hey, you all of a sudden, you're like, there's electricity in you," and I guess that's the industry I'm in, so I should, kind of radiate electricity as well. But from externally, even now, a lot of people see this as some people refer to this region and as petro states. And I remind those people, actually there's another state over the Atlantic that's the largest producer on the planet of hydrocarbons, but we'll leave that for now. But yeah, so there's a view here of from the outside of oil, of gas, etc. And what I have seen, and I'd like to see your perspective as well, is actually in the last years, perhaps possibly the last decade, a massive organizational corporate transformation, which has been hidden from many eyes. And now we're seeing the fruits of that in the region and beyond. It would be great if you could give us a bit of a mapping of what you have seen, some of the new companies, policies, and how the reach has just gone beyond all borders.
Yeah, so I think it's always important to start with Masdar. And for anyone who doesn't know, Masdar is Abu Dhabi Clean Energy Company. And it started in 2006. And this was a time when oil prices were $66 to $77 a barrel. And that's important
Yeah.
because I think that, many people assume that when oil prices are low, that's when everyone's looking for an alternative. But that wasn't necessarily the case in the UAE. They started laying those that framework long before we saw the later crash in oil prices. And that push was still relevant when oil prices were at $140,
Yeah.
by the way. So again, incredibly important. And then you saw like the UAE Energy 2050 plan come about
Yeah.
2014, but there had already been momentum. And I don't know if it's because maybe the UAE hadn't been as vocal or the Middle East hadn't been as vocal as to some of their uh, the groundwork that they were laying, or if it just wasn't picked up in other publications or other people just
Mm.
didn't get the news. But you also had Aqua Power that started in Saudi Arabia, and
Yeah.
what's interesting about Aqua Power is that initially the company was investing outside of the region. And they were investing in conventional power plays.
Hmm.
And then you started to see that shift when Aqua Power did concentrated solar power in South Africa, also in Morocco. And how that's really come full circle is that you see these companies actually bringing a lot to the table at home. And Aqua Power was the driving force behind, in my opinion, behind solar prices, solar
Hmm.
photovoltaic prices decreasing, because in 2015, they submitted a bid for the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park in Dubai. Now
Right.
they submitted a regular bid and an alternative bid. And before Aqua Power had come in, the lowest cost for producing solar power through solar PV was, I believe, 6.13 US cents, and that was seen India and Brazil. Aqua Power came in with their first proposal at 5.98 US cents, and then they submitted an alternative bid, which was it's basically like wholesale. Like if you do an even larger project,
Mhm.
then we can do it at an even lower cost, and that was 5.84 cents. And I feel like that was a turning point that really got these companies to start thinking, how can we get the price? How can we get it lower? And then that also has the ripple effect of creating more economies of scale. So you just saw major momentum in solar, and that was here in the Middle East.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? That's actually that whole approach has also transferred into wind. Now we have the largest large scale kind of wind farm in the region now in Saudi Arabia, and they're also positioning themselves for green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. And you'll see a lot of commentary and discussions, and obviously many people, many commentators, experts are circumspect about that. But just as you said, the way we have seen the region leverage economies of scale, I would not bet against them to do it in other technologies, in other new clean energy processes.
And, when we talk about green hydrogen, we have to look at the other natural resources that the region has. It's not just about oil and gas.
Yeah.
They are a part of the Sun Belt, and there are pockets of wind that can produce great amount of energy. And then if you have solar and wind, then why not green hydrogen? And you have the hydrogen capabilities because of the mature oil and gas sector.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, that brings me to another interesting observation. I should put this in a book one day. Honestly, it's like one of the coolest things about being here. Um, when you're dealing with a global economy and global players, and you're in one of the international centers. Myself, I've been in Dubai quite some time, and you see the world pass through Dubai. And I've always considered this, and I've had to explain this to other colleagues. And I said, look, if you're sitting in um, Spain, or if you're sitting in Germany, or if you're sitting in the United Kingdom, you generally have a lot of companies, a lot of research centers, and what have you, all UK based or all Spain based and all speaking Spanish and all German based and all speaking German. Whereas what you have here, you literally have the world in this, the world is here in this region, which makes it more interesting, more competitive, more daring, etc. So, would you consider the phrase or the perception of this region being a global corporate battleground for ideas, for investment, for change?
Well, that is one of the shifts that I see. I see the Middle East as the new business battleground. And that is because there's so much happening here. Um, and you also have so many, it's not just the GCC money that's funding that. You have so many companies from around the world who are coming here who also believe in it. And they're coming to this region because they can test out new products.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at energy in particular, you need to test these products in the harsh climates. And you have harsh climates in harsh weather in this region. You have the dust, you have the wind, etc. So you do need to be able to pilot and test those. You also have the ease of doing business. And again, that points to what I said earlier about watching the region open up more and to open up more to private investment. And you see that with more IPOs happening. I think that we all have to understand that if we're going to truly create a sustainable economy, and that's not just about environmentally friendly items or renewables, but it is to be sustainable, then we have to do it together. We have to collaborate together. So I think the Middle East has been really great at not only leveraging what they have on the ground here, but also being open to experts and other experience outside of the region and saying, you know what, let's talk about it and let's see how we can modify that. Let's see what lessons we can learn from that and how we can try to develop something that works here.
Absolutely. And you know, I had a discussion with somebody recently, and it gave me a bit of a history lesson, and said, well, the very concept of the Middle East is is a concept developed from the West, when historically they used to go east because this was the middle. He said, actually, now you have powers that are rising in the east, and actually they see this place as the Middle West. So hence this melting pot. I never thought about it like that, but when you put it like that, this side sees it as the Middle East, and perhaps this side sees it as the Middle West. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that that makes sense. I mean, even beyond energy, you look at it as a travel hub.
Mhm.
You can get most places in the world within a 6 hour flight. Most,
Yeah,
not all.
yeah.
And, you know, there are so many, it was a major trade route. So you still see a lot of influences from past civilizations and cultures. And it has maintained that kind of eccentric part of being a major trade place.
Mhm.
It's just modernized now.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing to put on the table with you, LeAnne, and that is, um, you know, you said it earlier on, the region, especially Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I mean, blessed with petroleum, blessed with solar resources, wind resources, um, and not only that, now you're blessed with Mr. GOAT, Mr. Cristiano Ronaldo. You now have, you know, heartbreaker Neymar. You have the adored Benzema. You know, so you have all that stuff as well, and and it's a good segue into just analyzing the way the region, the countries are moving, and that they seem to have such a vision across all sectors of economics and entertainment and society. And they're also involved in a heavy way in the energy, across the energy value chain, in every aspect of energy, and not just domestically, but kind of globally and internationally. They have huge uh, sovereign wealth funds and other corporate establishments that have a very outward looking view. So could there really be a global and a successful global energy transition without integrating the Middle East?
A good point. First of all, I don't think, again, I go back to collaboration, and that is key if we are really going to, transform and move into more sustainable areas. But I think what's really important, and we've been saying this the whole conversation, but what's really important is the fact that it's almost a rebrand of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has always just thought of the Middle East as the oil and gas uh, king of the world, right? And there's so much more to it. And I'm not sure that there would be an energy transition without the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't have, one of your major players in the energy sector, without them committing collectively, and they have, we see targets all throughout the
Yeah.
region. We've seen tangible steps being taken, so if you didn't have that, what would it really be? I mean, what do you think it would be?
Mm-hmm. Well, it would be disjointed to be very to be to the point. Sorry, I didn't waffle there. Normally I waffle a lot, but that's right. It would be disjointed. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there would be a gaping hole. I think the natural endowment of resources they have, I think the melting pot that they have, the sheer potential they have. And I mean, I am at my most optimistic than I have been for a long time for this region. And the reason for it is it's no secret in terms of the human capital, the cultural capital, the energy resource capital, the sovereign wealth capital, etc., of the whole region. And to see now further cooperation between countries, to see further pushes towards peace. And you're seeing amazing kind of changes because of that. All these kind of global events, whether it's COP28, whether it's the Expo, whether it's the big sporting events, UFC World Championship, World Cup football, or etc. in Qatar and other places. These things definitely would not happen unless the region was moving in that direction. But the sheer potential, not just for the region, but to impact the world, all the factors are there. I mean, they're displaced. They're investing in the United States. They're investing in R&D in the United Kingdom. They've bought half of the best real estate in London. They're investing in the Balkans. They're investing in Central Asia. They're investing in a big way now into Africa, Latin America, Asia, of course, India and China, and other countries. So I think the global impact that they can have, and being the Middle East and Middle West, and having that strong energy endowment, I think puts them in an excellent position. Yeah.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say potential. There's so much room for growth. And if we're just talking about technology and businesses, we're just talking about that. I mean, you can do so much here than what you can possibly do in more mature areas. You have the ability to test more. And I think that is so huge. But another point that I want to make here is that it's not just the region investing outwardly. And I think that it's really important to identify and recognize that the region is investing locally, domestically, it's investing in its people. And we're seeing a lot of investment going into professional development and upskilling locals. And it's not just a playground for others to come in anymore. It is, okay, if you're coming in, you need to be helping us for the long term. So it is a very much so long-term view and not a short-term pay to play, if you will.
That's a really good point, actually. And in all of my excitement thinking global, I actually miss that one. We're coming towards the kind of end of our time, but before we conclude, what's one?
Don't give me a hard question.
No, not a hard one. Well, this might be a hard one. Let's see. But what are one of the things that you really love about this region?
Well, I think all the time how lucky I am to have been able to come to the region and for the ability to have stayed as long as I have. So one of the major things that I absolutely love about the region, and it's going to be a standard message, but I have points if anyone cares, but it's the people. I have really been blessed with making some really amazing friends, so that's probably my most favorite thing about being in the region. And what about you?
Well, you've taken the people thing. You've taken the people thing. I actually think that this region has something the world needs, the whole world needs right now. And that is an optimistic, positive mindset full of hope. That's the thing about this region. I mean, the region doesn't talk itself down. The region, okay, we have a problem, let's solve it. But look at all this potential. Look at all these things we're doing. Look at all these policies we're making. Look at all these improvements we're making. This is our vision for 2050. This is our vision. We have a vision to the moon. forget the moon. Now there's a vision to Mars. Before you know it, there'll be a vision, there'll be something else. So I think that uplifting, optimistic, energetic, ambitious, and inspirational vibe. I think that's just amazing. And of course, most of the time, the weather. You know.
So you must be talking about the 3 months out of the year.
Well, 6 if you stretch it, but yeah, you get to see the sun every day, and yeah, so the half of the year, absolutely. But as I said, the region varies. So if it's getting a little hot in Riyadh, maybe you got a Cairo. If it's getting a little hot there, maybe got a Beirut. If it, we have this flexibility.
Or you can come visit me. And you can
Yeah.
experience 4 seasons, just
Sounds,
in Saudi as
sounds
well.
good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, LeAnne, this was really good fun. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope everybody that watches this enjoys it as well. We've had a good exchange of ideas, some good banter. That's always good, and really exciting place to be. And yeah, hopefully in a few months or something, we do it again, touch some other points, and I gotta come and see you. Absolutely.
I'll be waiting.
Sounds good. All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.